Cowboy Carney was at the Calgary Stampede last week where he looked like a little bit of a fool trying to flip some pancakes with his soft banker hands.
That's better in Ottawa. There you go. I'm going to do another one. I'm practicing. I got a little cocky there.
They were too gooey to flip, Carney. You gotta let him sit a while. But while Mark was yeehawing his way through Alberta, business people all over the country were working hard to get their projects of national interest on Carney's list. I'm sure you heard of some of them. There's the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario, the Pathways Alliance project in Alberta, the Northwest Coast Bitumen Pipeline, the Arctic Gateway Rail System, the Port of Churchill, and many, many more. And if there's one thing that politicians love to talk about, it's getting a project shovel-ready.
We're going to be focused on really shovel-ready projects.
And directing investment to make land shovel-ready.
To identify projects that are close to shovel-ready.
Shovel-ready zones.
Shovel-ready zones.
There's a lot going on with these projects, but there is one project that you don't hear much about, even though it could cost the federal government over $500 million. The Grays Bay Port and Road. It's a 230-kilometer all-season road and deep water port that would connect Nunavut to the Northwest Territories to that hotly contested Northwest Passage. And with all the debate going on with these nation-building projects like that Ring of Fire, this one seems relatively non-controversial. I mean, it's Indigenous-led, it could unlock critical minerals, and is good for that all-important Canadian Arctic security. And it's supposedly taking environmental concerns very seriously. To me, that seems like a slam dunk. This could be our very first successful nation-building project under the Carney government, but it's not that simple.
A lot of them are against it because that's part of our hunting grounds and our migration routes for the island caribous.
I called up a local Kugluktuk hunter whose lands would be affected by the road.
My name is Jeffrey Niptanatiak. I'm from Kugluktuk, Nunavut, Canada, one of the northernmost communities in Nunavut region.
He told me about the summer hunting season so far.
Hunting is going good. There's quite a few people getting some caribous from all over. Everybody's trying to get some caribou before it gets too hot here. It's already been really hot. It's already been like 35 degrees here already. All the animals, they don't stay still in that kind of heat. They're constantly running. This season, I haven't got any time to go out caribou hunting yet. But a lot of my family, they're going out on the quads and out on the boats, and they're getting their quota.
Jeffrey's excited to get his things together. He's excited to gear up and hit the backcountry out there himself.
So you get out your groceries, all your camping gear, your skinning tools, your knives, and some tools here and there, and some parts that you think you might need for your snow machine or your quad or your boat there. You pack it up either on a sled that we make ourselves, or a boat if you're going out in a boat. The weather can get pretty bad up here for a few days. So you want to plan enough food for at least a week.
The Grays Bay Port and Road project has been a huge point of conversation among the hunters up there. Mostly, they are just wondering if it will affect the caribou population.
Yes, it will. It definitely will. If they see something man-made, then they're going to obviously stay away from it because there's a lot of noise being made, and the caribous and animals, they don't like to hear that. Mm-hmm. So they get scared of it, then they run away, and then they make new routes. A lot of them are saying it's going to ruin our land, it's going to ruin their routes, it's going to disturb their routes, it's going to affect one thing after the other. I've seen it done before, I've seen it happen with the other mines.
But you know what? The funny thing about the Grays Bay Port and Road project is that it's not just a road. There's also a port.
Putting in your ports, your docks and everything, right? So obviously you're going to get some disturbance in the marine, in the ecosystem, in the water there. Mix up some sediments and shit like that,
There is concerns from a whole bunch of parties. There's hangups, there's impacts, but I wanted to understand the project better. So I spoke to Jane George. She is a longtime reporter and broadcaster with CBC North and Nunatsiaq News. Her new book on reporting in the North is out this August.
And I wanted to plug my book coming out.
Yeah, what's it called?
It's called Like an Iceberg and Confessions of an Arctic Journalist.
She is an expert in the North, and if it happened up there, Jane probably knows about it. Jane, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hear a lot about these critical infrastructure projects, but we don't hear too much about the Grays Bay Port and Road, where I live in Ottawa. I hear a lot more about the Ring of Fire, a lot more about pipelines. So for someone that's never heard about the Grays Bay Port and Road, can you explain this project to me like I've never heard of it before?
First of all, it's probably one of the most remote projects that you could have in Canada. So you can be excused for not being able to put your finger on the map where it is. It's what we call in the North, even the high Arctic almost portion on the Arctic coastline, the Western Arctic coastline of Canada, which is right now not connected in the Northwest Territories to the rest of Canada, except through Inuvik, which is a little bit further towards Alaska. So what is interesting about Grays Bay is that it's on the western end of the Northwest Passage. So a lot of people say, oh yeah, I know where the Northwest Passage is. That's really up there. So that's where Grays Bay is. And there really is not a lot of infrastructure around Grays Bay. In fact, there's really nothing. There's a community of about 1,500 called Kugluktuk at, I forgot how many kilometers, 80 kilometers maybe away. And then if you go down the Northwest Passage a little bit, you run into Cambridge Bay, which is a larger community and has a little more infrastructure. You are, though, within spitting distance of many mines and exploration territories. So it has some interest anyway.
And the name implies that it is a port and it is a road. What's the purpose of that port and that road?
I was thinking about that the other day as knowing that I would be talking to you. And it made me think back to a time when I was in Cambridge Bay. And all of a sudden, early in the end of October, everything froze solid. So there was absolutely no way of getting orders by boat into the community. And at the same time, the boats had been late because there was very low water levels in Northwest Territories and in the community of Hay River where they tried to ship things up. Anyway, so basically nobody had what they ordered. They didn't have their trucks. They didn't have their soft drinks. They didn't have anything, all the stuff that you order to keep if you're a store or a person to over the winter didn't arrive. So basically, the idea that a port would be there would really make it a lot easier to get goods over to the other communities. So that's why a port would be great. It would also be interesting because if you have mines, they need to also get out what they produce. And you wouldn't be at the mercy of climate change at both ends of the supply route right now.
And is this the first all-season road to the Northwest Passage?
Yes, it would be. There is nothing that goes to the Northwest Passage right now. There have been other projects that have withered, if I can say that haven't really taken off.
When did you first hear about the Grays Bay Port and Road? It's my understanding that this has been on the North's radar for a very long time.
Yeah, in fact, when I start thinking about how long ago it was, it's just seems like a really long time ago. I am sure that it first came onto my personal radar in 2010 at 2010 at a meeting in Cambridge Bay of the Kitikmeot Inuit organization, in which they announced that they were creating this other organization called the Nunavut Resources Corp, which would own the infrastructure involved in the road, get money from the feds, and move the project ahead.
This project has changed hands many times, to my understanding. Why has the leadership of this changed so much?
Well, I think it's kind of like name changes, same people, different names, but it does make it really confusing when you're trying to like establish a timeline for anything and who got what money when, what did they do with it. So the Nunavut Resources Corp got some money from the feds. Then I guess they spent it. They lost a little bit of it in a financial scam, and then they came back, or they dropped it, and then they tried to get more money, and now they have a new name.
Oh my God, I remember that. In like 2017, right? Some scammers from maybe the Congo impersonated the COO of Nunavut Resources Corporation. I'm just looking at it now. They sent some very convincing looking emails to their bookkeeper, convincing them to send money to people that weren't actually connected with the company. And the scammer walked away with $300,000. That is nuts.
The timeline is just so like a soap opera kind of, they started, then they put in they were going to be shovel ready. They always say shovel ready in 2014. No, 2019. No, we can't. We're off. But just recently, Carney, as you know, said that it was a priority. So it's always been a doable, needed kind of project, but it needs somebody else to need it who has deep pockets.
So is just funding the main things that's been holding this up?
Obviously, if somebody came along with $1 billion now, it would happen, no matter who they were, maybe. I don't know. But that money is a big thing, and it's doubled in price in the time that I've been following it from afar, right? So money is one thing, but you do need some other reasons to have it. Like a mine that would be churning out different kinds of minerals that would be needed right now, rare earth. If that was happening, well, that would be great, and then it would probably happen. I think that the compelling reasons right now are changing a little bit from mining, and probably even changing from what should be of concern, which is cost of living and getting people what they need to survive in the North. I think climate change is definitely having an impact on it. If you look down the road, so to speak, you can see that things are going to warm more, and that the river transport that they've been using to like up the Mackenzie or whatever, the barges is going to be less reliable because there's not enough water for them to travel on. Plus you have the weird ice happening in the Northwest Passage.
Cruise ships have been coming pretty regularly to Cambridge Bay ever since the ice in the Northwest Passage melted enough to make the journey a safe one.
The Arctic is opening up. These thick blocks of ice are melting, clearing the way for ships to travel through.
There's also Arctic security, and I think that's a huge thing right now. Like they're just crying out for more surveillance there.
The Arctic is no longer a low-tension region.
Like literally, people come into the Northwest Passage every year who shouldn't be there. I've seen them. No one even knows who they are. They're there. Oh, where are you from?
None of your business. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's none of your business. And when nothing else was happening, to keep me busy in August, I would always have a story about how some people came in on a boat and would have all the local people over for a party and everybody would get drunk. Well, that wasn't looked at very well. Or they would not register, and all of a sudden, who is this person who's sailing or going by jet ski? There was a group of people from the States who wanted to do that. They got in trouble, but there is no surveillance.
And I mean, in prep for this interview, I looked at some of your stories of people coming through the Northwest Passage. There's the boatload of wild Australian party makers that arrived in Cambridge Bay on a 34-meter luxury motor yacht from Australia, which sleeps 12 in cabins with ensuite bathrooms and entertainment system. There was also that sailor from New Zealand who didn't receive permission from Transport Canada to use the passage. He was made to pay $5,000 per day he was there. And then there's also a cruise ship that was actually granted access to leave from Alaska to carry 1,700 passengers to New York City on a 32-day luxury trip. That's crazy.
I'll tell you how it is. You can buy a ticket to Cambridge Bay or Kugluktuk. You can probably get off there with your whatever, and you can, I don't know how they got the jet skis there. Like, that was just an accident waiting to happen. I started reporting on them as soon as I heard about them, and eventually they needed a giant rescue from the Canadian government, of course. And so you can go that way, and actually you could walk right in. They don't do a big check of your baggage when you arrive, you know, like, do you have a kayak, or where are you going? Like, no one asks that. It's just like open. It's like totally open up there. So you get a lot of nutty people anyway.
When this project was proposed, it was much more of an industry heavy look. But now we're seeing the importance of a more connected North. We're seeing more importance of security, and Carney's promise of bolstering security is really what is pushing this along.
Yes, I would agree totally. And I didn't hear anyone really mention Arctic security back like 10 years ago. Like, I mean, it was still an issue which could have been dealt with, but it wasn't talked about that much. And it was mostly talked about the terms of lowering the cost of living, you know, bringing in better internet, although the internet now has really improved anyway up there, but however they do it. But, and I guess it was also looked at by the Kitikmeot Inuit Association as a way of making money, because they would be the owners of the infrastructure. Like the feds would not pay for the whole thing. They would also pay for it through user fees over time. Like, you want to ship things up to the port, you're going to pay. Like, it's not going to be free. You want to drive on the road, you're going to get charged.
The way we're talking about this, it seems almost like a no-brainer and almost like a sure thing. But as you mentioned, there is some pushback. What's the main pushback that you've heard?
Everyone is concerned about the wildlife in that area. Like, this used to be a really wildlife-rich area. Everybody was, you had literally millions of caribou or hundreds of thousands of caribou that they would be able to have and use for food and clothing. Well, the caribou numbers have plummeted. Caribou, I mean, it could be a natural cycle. It's also that caribou do not like any disturbance, any kind. So, like, if there's a road or a building, like, they get very skittish. And I mean, their numbers are already not really doing very well. So I don't know whether this big road project, would it be just too much for them, or would they go somewhere else? Like, sometimes they go somewhere else anyway. So there's that. The hunters, not all the hunters are happy. And the other people who might not be happy are people who say, well, what's in it for me? All the money from this project is going to go into the Kitikmeot Inuit Association. And the Kitikmeot Inuit Association doesn't always go around handing out money to local residents. Like, they keep it and they build big buildings and they go on trips. I don't mean to be criticizing them, but, you know, all that takes a lot of money. There's a huge need for housing in the communities and food. Like, people, you know, it's the cost of living is so expensive. And there's a lot of those people are saying, well, you know, okay, all well and good, but is that going to put food on my table? And what about the animals that have sustained us? So I think those would be the two major things. Like, people are not really anti-development, but they are not keen on the impacts of the development.
I've read that the companies in charge say that they're very focused on the environmental assessment process, but I mean, do you buy it?
Yes and no. I mean, the environmental assessment process is stringent. And I mean, I've sat through these meetings, are like marathon meetings of, like, you know, 9 hours a day for 2 weeks or something like that. They'll look at the whole project, all of the impacts, and then they come out with recommendations, like, you know, to mitigate the impact on caribou. Like, everybody gets a chance to talk at these meetings. You'll hear from the hunters. They're fascinating meetings because everybody has a chance to say what they want to say. You have the elders, you have everybody, the feds. They usually have like many, like 20 different groups will be up there speaking, you know, who represent caribou groups and NWT here, they are. So it's quite interesting. So they listen to it all. They produce documents of hundreds of pages long, and then eventually they do a recommendation. So it could be like 100 recommendations, like to not harm the caribou. You will have to stop work for 3 months when they're around, or something like that. Sometimes the recommendations are very difficult. You can't really do the project because the recommendations are so strict.
Going back to Mark Carney's Bill C5, in that bill, there's the right to override some regulations. And is this a project where you could see the environmental assessment getting overridden?
Well, it would depend on how far they go with the caribou protection, I would guess, because that's the big issue. But there are so many people that have mixed feelings about how you can tell caribou to do anything or control them. So I don't know. I think that I don't know. I really don't know. It would be, I think that in this project, the will of the government to fund what they have to fund, and we're talking that they will be paying, I mean, it could be a $500 million by the time or more, that they have to be willing to have that money. I think there's a need for a road. I mean, there is going to be a road sometime, somewhere there.
That's actually, that's actually interesting, because one of the criticisms I've read is that it's a road to nowhere and it'll exclusively benefit private interests that are riding on the coattails of the federal government's investment, and the people won't actually use that road.
Well, being where it's located, it's not going to be that easy for them to access it. But given people's ingenuity, I wouldn't be surprised if pretty soon they have buses going down to Yellowknife or something, or snowmobiles in winter. But surely it's not built for the local person to take a weekend trip. I mean, that's a long, hard road. Like, I've never been down on the Dempster Highway from, that goes up to Nunavut, but that's a long drive. You really got to like to drive. I mean, that road won't be like a highway. It's going to be
white knuckling.
Totally. And you're not going to have little gas stations every You're a big trucker. You're full of stuff that's heavy, that costs a lot of money to fly on an airplane. Stuff like that. You want to build more houses. It's a great way of getting the stuff you need in there.
There's also the idea that this is going to bring jobs, both in the construction and on the industry side. But there's not that many people in Nunavut.
Oh, that's a good point. And there are already people who really want to work. A lot of them are already working. However, construction is a very popular thing for people to do. Like, you don't have to even be a high school grad usually to do construction, or you can do on-the-job training. And, if there was training programs associated with the building of the road, I think a lot of people really like that. Men and women have been involved in the mining industry in central Nunavut, but hopefully they would be able to offer incentives to people. Like, we'll offer you training. You can learn how to, drive one of those big trucks, and people like that.
When you look at the headlines of Bill C5 and these major infrastructure nation building projects, there's a few that always stand out. Like I mentioned earlier, there's the Ring of Fire, there's the pipelines, there's this. The Ring of Fire is huge, and it incorporates many more different governments than the Grays Bay project. That's a component in this being easier to manage?
Yeah, I absolutely think that the fewer interveners, as they always like to call them, that are involved, the easier it is. Absolutely. So, like, really, for Grays Bay, you have Nunavut, and then you have NWT who wants it. If you get your supporters all lined up, that's at least one thing out of the way, right?
Why do you think it's an important project?
Well, I think it's an important project because it is going to improve people's lives. In the North, they will have cheaper goods coming in. They will have hopefully better security. It's going to make the North on a better, more equal level with people in the South. The whole standard of living is very much lower in the North than in the South. If you go and look around like Northern Europe or Iceland, you will see that the roads went up, and they were, in a way, game changers. They joined. I mean, in some ways, they changed things for the worse. The Indigenous people are always sort of taking the brunt of these, and the animals taking the brunt of these developments. Industry is not out there to destroy the environment, but just by their very presence and what they do, that's what happens. But there are already mines all over the place. I mean, it's already happening. We can't go back to the garden. The garden isn't there anymore, and not even in Western Nunavut, which has been kind of the forgotten part of the Arctic. We can't go back. We can't go back to the way it was. The way that development is done in Nunavut, this is as good as it can get. I mean, people who founded Nunavut when it was created in 1999, like they really did a lot of thought about perhaps too much thought on control of environmental damage and keeping the land forever intact and getting benefits for Inuit. And until you've been in these places, you can't visualize what it's like, and you don't care about it. I don't know how to get people to care about things, because it's hard even for us to care about our own communities, less one that's 4,000 kilometers away and it's cold, and and people don't always relate to that.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, next project, give me a call.
We will. A lot of this project's success relies on how the Nunavut Impact Review Board assesses the future ecological damage. So I asked Brendan Bell about it, the CEO of West Kitikmeot Resources Corporation, the company in charge of the project. I was looking at the Nunavut Impact Review Board comments on some of the projects, and there's obviously people that are concerned about the environmental impacts. Caribou, dolphins. I think the Kugluktuk Hunters and Trappers Association have been outspoken about that. Caribou are at critically low numbers. What do you say to those people that are concerned about this?
Well, that's exactly the kind of feedback that we need. Our experience in building infrastructure at the diamond mines has given us a good sense of what needs to be done to mitigate against some of the concerns that arise from caribou migration. So, for instance, as we design the linear infrastructure, which is really where you have the caribou concerns, we are ensuring that it's designed with graduated and gradual sloping so that caribou can cross the road. At the mines, the experience has been that caribou actually love to travel on the road, as you might imagine, because it's easier than walking through fields with boulders and less dangerous for them, I suppose, as they make their migration. And then I think the operating parameters, if there are caribou in the neighborhood, the trucks need to shut down full stop. As for the port, and traffic in the port, it's not just dolphins, but marine mammals and community concerns. If there's open water, depending on the season for ice breaking, that's another community concern that comes up. So all of these things go into an environmental assessment. This is exactly why we consult.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I mean, from the comments that I was reading, they seem to be pretty clear that like caribou just don't like roads. Is there some people that you think are just never going to be on board, and you just have to minimize the amount of damage?
We hope to convince everybody that this project is in the regional interest. Will we convince everybody? I'm not sure, but we're going to do our best to make sure that we design the project in a way that has the lightest touch. Anytime in this part of the world, or really anywhere that you develop infrastructure, there will be impacts. That's unavoidable. It's about minimizing and mitigating against those impacts. So,
the interesting thing about this project, at least to me, is that there seems to be a decent amount of consensus that this will benefit, at least in some way, almost everybody, including hunters like Jeffrey, who you heard from earlier. The whole project is hinging on everybody doing their best to minimize impact. That's the government, that's the review board, and most importantly, West Kitikmeot Resources, the company in charge.
It's manageable as long as they're keeping their end of the deal. If they're going by their guidelines and their site expectations, then I don't think it shouldn't be a problem, too big of a problem.
Right. So it all comes down to kind of what's in that environmental assessment then.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. Good luck with the rest of the season. All right, that has been This Week in Canadian Politics. I will see you next week. Please let us know what you're pissed off about, what you're watching closely, and what you want to hear about on this show. You can email me at sam@canadaland.com. And please remember to hit that subscribe button and like the episodes. And you know what? While you're at it, you can share it with your friends. It really helps. Thanks a lot.